welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Sucio Talk Podcast. Here, I got the camera super close to me so I can do that. Sucio Talk Podcast, suciotalk.com, 510-463-1145. That is the hotline. Give that a call. Leave a message. Text message. If you are afraid that I might not keep it anonymous, it's all good. I will keep it anonymous unless you say otherwise. Okay? So there's that. Today I'm talking to Elijah Attard. Elijah lives in Sydney, Australia. Okay? Roots Hospitality Podcast is what it is. What I'm going to do is record this little intro. You got about an hour and a half of footage with me and him talking on the Google Meet. It's the first virtual podcast that I did, so please enjoy. Right now I'm in a remote location in a nice room here, in a very luxurious home on a golf course, living the life. Not really. Personal chefing, going up between Oakland and Palm Springy for the next couple months. And I have a tasting to be an executive chef of a restaurant that's opening next year soon. We haven't scheduled yet, but I've been talking to them. Super excited to do this tasting. I really do feel like this next step in the realm of cooking is, where I belong. I do not belong as a personal chef. I do not belong as a pop-up chef. It's just not me. When I got into this game, I never said not one time that I was going to open my own restaurant. I never wanted that. I just want to be a chef, man. I want to worry about the food. I don't want to worry about the fucking light bill. You know what I mean? And those are the things that you have to worry about as an owner. And, in terms of searching for a work-life balance that works for me, I think that being the chef and having the owner not have to worry about any of the operational things, just keep the fucking lights on, and I'll make sure you make enough money to do so, is where I'm going to go. And we'll see. I could be wrong. I could end up selling ass by the end of the year. Shout out to my fam, my mom, my dad. Happy New Year, everyone. Hopefully you're keeping up with your New Year's resolution, and if you're not, it's all right. Start next week. Like we're still in the first month here. I feel like that's what happens. People fuck up by June 10th or January 10th, and then they don't do any more trying. They just give up and say, well, But here we are. We're neither here nor there. I'm excited because I got my portable podcast equipment up and running, so I'm feeling good. Feeling good about getting a live setup. Feeling good about being able to show my computer screen as well as play some music from it and be able to show it, So check this out. Boom, you see that? It's me on my desktop on my computer. I don't really keep a lot of shit on my desktop, bro. Zoom just popped up because I downloaded it, but other than that, I keep one thing where I write all menu notes, meaning just ideas of food that I have that, just write them down. I got my trusty recycle bin, and you got the old logo right here. So we're up in the game when it comes to what we could do, what I could do, right, while I produce this show, act in the show, do all that shit in the show. Okay? There's the internet popping up for you. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to show you that. other than that, guys, live show just happened. If you're listening to this podcast, it just happened. Live shows every Monday after service, 10 p.m. Pacific time. It's California time. People in New York, unfortunately, that's 1 a.m. for you, but that's okay. The bars get out at 4. That means you guys are still up and going. If you don't want to go to the bar, just listen to Sucio talk on the way home and your cab drive home, your drive home, whatever, home. And relax. You can call in from anywhere in the world. The number is 510-463-1145. Hit up suciotalk.com. Get yourself some merch. It helps with the show. It helps me be able to be autonomous to, move around and do all the things that I want to do, plus keep this going on my quest to become the best food podcast there ever was. So it was, grateful to be able to talk to other food podcasts. Grateful that I'm not so young and as jealous as I used to be. I used to be really mad when other people got shit. I was like, man, fuck you. Like, I've learned to move past that and be happy for everybody. There's enough for everybody to eat. So I'm not going to, think that way anymore, or I haven't thought that way in a while. And so I'm happy to see everybody winning, happy to see all these new platforms coming out, showing us what the world of podcasting can do for food. I feel like we could spread positivity on here. We could spread truth as well as answer for the negativity and try to find some conflict resolution. A big one is a lot of CDCs out here hate their old executive chefs. It's a love-hate relationship always when it comes to that. And you guys need to fucking fix those relationships, okay? You need to fucking call the person that spent 6 to 8 years working for you. I'm not talking about me, okay? I'm just saying that it's happened to a lot of people that I talk to. And it's kind of bullshit that these, high-profile chefs don't have the balls to call them and say, hey, man, everything that happened, sorry, I'm here for you if you need. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. And sometimes you don't know how much you hurt people. I do it all the time with the way I talk. Sometimes I'm aggressive. Most times I'm aggressive. And people take that the wrong way. Oh, he's being this way with me. Not at all. It's just the way that I am. And, I'm just kind of on this energy of saying, fuck it, dude. This is just the way I am. And I need to accept myself rather than try to fight who I am internally, just like who I was born as, There's things you could change, and I'm always for change. I think that you can always kind of change things. But fundamentally, I think that there's some things within your being that will always be. And you spend a lot of energy fighting against those things when you need to accept it and learn how to live with them in a better way, right? Other than shut it off from society, then you got to lie about it, right? It's not good. Nobody likes that. So still looking for small or short video editors. If anybody out there knows any Reels makers, if your little brother or some little sister out there wants to become part of Sucio Talk and make more money than older sis or older bro in about 3 years, let me know. All right, we're planning a online takeover out here, okay? Planning on making this bag. So for all you chefs out there, especially the ones that sticking their hand in the grease trap, no fear, no gloves, shout out to you. Shout out to all the restaurants that are opening this year. Shit's going to be hard, but it's going to be well worth it. All right? Todo el mundo, cuídate. Peace out. Enjoy the show.
got a pop up at at a bar tomorrow, so I'm trying to smash away on this prep.
Oh,
So,
okay. I see. What bar are you cooking at?
it's a bar called PS40. So
Okay.
it's a cocktail bar. They
Okay.
do like amazing drinks. So they host pop ups weekly, and me and my partner are doing a pop up for the next 2 Tuesdays, doing
Right.
like Australian nostalgia snacks.
Okay.
So like really stuff we grew up with. So things like Vegemite or your Splice or
Mm-hmm.
mash and gravy. Just kind of taking that and reinventing it
Right.
and doing it in a bar context.
Oh, dope, man. Well, here on Sucio Talk, we're here to talk about you, baby. So you started this podcast, Roots Hospitality Podcast. When did you start it?
Yeah, dude. I started in the lockdown, man. Like in 2020. I remember it was the time when all the restaurants had shut, and I don't know. I think it's just the chef inside of you that it becomes restless. You know,
Right.
you can't not be doing something. So I hated that idea of just kind of being forced to not be cooking or something to do with restaurants. So
Right.
I just started as a way to kind of reconnect with the industry and to have a laugh, man. Like
Yeah.
it's nice to just have a get people on and just talk absolute shit and just what else better to do than just kind of talk about and reflect on your life or your career
Right.
when really the restaurants are shut. So I thought fuck it.
And when you're
And yeah.
when you're cooking at a restaurant, I find the best thing is that banter, that camaraderie. So I
Dude,
think you're touching on that. That's the one thing that we all missed when we first got onto the pandemic. So
dude, I was just talking absolute shit. Like
yeah.
it didn't even have to make any sense whatsoever, but yeah, it's that's because I couldn't do it, man. Like I've
Yeah.
talked to so many chefs where they've worked in kitchens where it was just absolute silence. You know, there
Fuck
was
that,
not
dude.
oh, fuck, tell me about it, man. It's fucking bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
I could never work. It's just too, like, just chill out, man. Like, you can still do amazing food and still do, like, incredible, and work with incredible produce and put out some next level shit and still have a laugh
Yeah.
while you're doing it. You know?
You're damn right, man. You're damn right. So when you go about, okay, you're going to start a podcast. What is your first step? Do you go
Oh,
buy
man.
equipment? Do you go do the research first? Do you talk to a friend who has a podcast? What was the first step?
It's kind of like blind baking in a sense,
Right.
where you've got the idea and you're just kind of pulling it all together, and you don't know if it's going to work. You don't know what you're doing. You don't really know until you get your first episode out there
Right.
as to how it's going to be received. If it was just a dumb idea at the time and then it just kind of happens. But yeah, it was purely a case of just going, fuck it. Like, I've not done this before. What do I do? Just do some research, get some microphones, and just fuck around and just go for gold, man. It's crazy. Like, I remember re-listening to like my first few episodes just now, and it's just so it's kind of embarrassing. Like, it's like
Yeah,
looking back.
it definitely is.
Yeah, it's kind of looking back at your old dishes when you were an apprentice and you were taking photos, thinking, "Oh man, that plating was sick," or like, "Look at how I've got these cherry bell radishes and I've thinly sliced them like I'm a fucking four-headed chef or some
Right.
bullshit." Like, just stuff like that. That's how I think about these earlier episodes, where it was like, man, like, I loved my commitment and my determination to want to do something, and somehow it's grown into this. Don't ask me how. It's just
Yeah.
like learning to walk. You know, you trip and fall, and you get up and you keep going.
Exactly. How many episodes you in now?
So I'm at 56 now. So I just dropped
56.
on with Andre
Got
today,
you.
my Australia time.
So are you doing one a month for a couple years now?
Yeah,
About-
initially it was once a week.
Mhm.
For the first 30 or 20 or 30
Shit's
episodes. I was
fucking
doing it.
rough. Shit's hard work.
This is while I was full time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so while I was full time chefing. So I mean, the first 10 maybe came out while we're in lockdown, because I think Australia were in lockdown for like there was about 6 months total, and it was like 3-month lockdown, then a second lockdown.
Right.
So the first 10, I think, eventually came out while that was happening. But after that, it was just on the first Monday on my day off, every week I would schedule to go and talk to somebody, because I would go to their venue.
Right.
And then it was just a case of while I was on the train on the way to work every 20 minutes, I'd sit down, put my earphones in, I'd just edit, and I'd edit every episode.
Yeah.
And then push them out the next week. So
When you edit the episodes, what are you editing? Are you editing the, to make it concise, the ums and the thes, or are you trying to isolate certain material.
Yeah, for sure. So initially, I think when I don't know, in my head, I guess that I wanted to cut maybe certain topics that I felt like were talked too long. So
Right.
if you were listening, that you wouldn't get bored or you wouldn't think, oh, okay, I get what they're trying to talk about, snippet kind of thing. Um, eventually I wanted it to be really raw and just kind of is what it is. And it's gone back to that now where it's become just like talk your shit, like whatever, and I don't really edit it. I just go through and if there are certain thing like the ums and ahs or if they're pauses, I'll just trim those. It's not necessarily the what we talk about because
Right.
that's not a problem now. And I think that happens when you get more confident, right? Like
Right.
initially when you start, you have your list of questions, you do your research on them, all this sort of stuff. But then now when you do it, you've got your list of questions, but because you're a bit more calmer and confident, you work them in a conversational style. So that's what I do instead of it being an interview like what I was originally, because I didn't want to come off as this unprofessional kind of not caring thing. So
Right.
you want to have the structure,
Mm-hmm.
but then now it's like, yeah, it's more because I think it helps that once you've got familiar with the hospitality community, they know you, they know your style, so they don't expect that professionalism because that's
Yeah.
not ever something I was going for either. It
Exactly.
was like we can talk about what's going on, have a laugh, but it not be so suit and tie. You know, this is for some magazine bullshit. So,
Mm-hmm. I've had
but
I've had some
yeah,
cooks come up to me and say, "Hey, remember that time you said this?" And I was like, "No, I don't remember that at all." But so it's they're out there and they're fucking listening, man. So
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
like as you do it, you start to feel this certain sense of responsibility to
yeah,
what the fucking content is gonna be. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly.
And this past year, I went through some phases where I was like, I'm not really feeling like that person that's on that show. I'm not really feeling that way. So I was like, I can't do
Right.
the show, And then recently I was like, you know what, man? Fuck your feelings. Fuck everything. Just do the fucking show, regardless of if it's gonna be sad, happy. Because I wanted everything to be light, right? But how can you be light when there's a goddamn world war going on? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah,
So in that sense, you gotta, I was like, how are we gonna solve this? But it's not my job to fucking solve everything in the world, right? So I was like, let me just do it one episode at a time, one little piece of conversation, and you'd be surprised how many times young cooks will come to me and say, "Hey, that thing you said really resonated with me, and because of that, I made a change, or I fucking moved to another state to work at a restaurant that you talked about." So I really do think that this is the future. You and Chef's PSA, Andre, I saw that podcast you did with him. Shout out to Andre from PSA, Chef's PSA podcast. Um, did you know of any other food podcasts before you started?
yeah. I knew of one or two. One in particular was a food journalist called Lee Tran Lam, who I eventually got on my podcast. She had one called "The Unbearable Lightness of Being Hungry," and that was kind of where I got my inspiration from.
Right.
Was because hers was very kind of just chill. It wasn't serious. Like she's a food podcaster, but she's just a food nerd.
Mm-hmm.
She just kind of loves food. So
Let's have a
like,
good time.
yeah. So and she's just got so many stories. She's been a food journalist for, more than a decade now.
Right.
So writing in and around Sydney. So she's so knowledgeable about all the restaurants and the chefs that have come in and yeah, her stories are crazy. Just with some really incredible chefs. So. But yeah, there was that, and there was another one called the Food Fight podcast, which was like another one as well. But there were the kind of those two. But other than that, I didn't really
Are they
feel as though there were many chef podcasts talking about chef shit.
right?
There's a lot of food podcasts talking about food or recipes or maybe about restaurants, but it wasn't really about chefs, and I didn't really feel it was for chefs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the food fight one that I'd listened to before, like there was a chef on that, but it kind of touched the surface for me. I didn't really feel like we were chatting about really chef shit, like
Right.
being in the shit, like some of your stories, that's become my final question for everybody that I've had on my podcast was your craziest or funniest moment you've been in the shit.
Right.
And I ask that to everybody, no matter if you're a apprentice or a head chef or anybody, because I think that's a really humbling way to reflect on your career no matter how good you are.
Yeah.
There's always still that moment that catches you. So
Yeah.
yeah, but no, there weren't too many that I feel like were touching on the chef side of things.
Right, right. So let me ask you this, Elijah. Let's take it all the way back. Where were you born?
I was born in the country, northern New South Wales, called Murwillumbah.
Okay.
It's not too far from where Iggy Azalea was born, funnily enough.
Okay.
She's born out in the country of Whoop Whoop, Australia. So,
You didn't like go to high school with her, did you?
No. That would have been pretty funny.
Is she like? Is she the pride of you guys over there? Are you super proud of her? You know?
No, not really.
He said no. That's so funny.
Like she's catchy. She's doing her thing,
Right.
and God respect. But yeah, it's not like she's not like the Hugh Jackman, you know?
Right. Okay, so Hugh Jackman, that's like your guy.
Yeah, he's that guy.
Right. Okay. I've always wondered that. I'm like, who, like, in terms of sports, like, who is your all-time, like, who is Muhammad Ali in Australia?
Yeah,
you know?
right. Oh, I mean, look, I'm not even really into sports myself, but I guess that would be like Donald Bradman, our cricket star, you know?
Cricket, okay.
Yeah,
never seen the game played, but
really?
If he's got a museum, then all right. Am I missing out?
Yeah.
Is that a game I should watch?
Oh, I mean, look, I don't watch it myself. If you want to crack it's a great game if you just want to crack a few beers and just like be outside and just have a banter with your mates.
Right.
Who's got a game in the background. Mm-hmm. It's kind of just like, you know, turn on the TV and there's like, I don't know, some footy in the background, but you're going to this cricket match. That's kind of what cricket is. Just like a long few hours where you just drink beers and have a laugh and complain that someone's hit the ball fucked up or some shit. So
okay. That's wild.
Yeah. But no, it was good, man. Like, I was born up in Murwillumbah, and then I was there for about 6 months before I moved back down to Sydney.
Right. So, what'd your parents do for a living?
My dad got his first full-time job when he had my oldest brother, and that was working at like it was called Southern Youth and Family Services. So, basically children that were in domestic households or abusive households or were homeless that needed somewhere to go.
Right.
That would be his workplace. So it was just a community housing for children under like 18 that needed somewhere to stay. So he did that for like 20 years. So he would take in the kids and they'd cook for them, you know, teach them responsibilities and all this sort of shit and help them get their way back into the community by helping them get a job and all this sort of stuff. So
yeah. Okay.
And then my mum had a few different jobs growing up. I remember she was a waitress at a pizza place.
Mm-hmm.
She was a bouncer at a nightclub for a while. And then she did like cooking jobs and stuff like that. So like she had a Cert 3 in hospitality, the same one that you get in Australia to become a chef, for example.
Right.
Like before I was born. So yeah, but other than that, my mum was the only one into cooking. On that side of things.
Okay. And then when did you have your first foray into cooking? Sort of knew that you were interested in?
Well, initially I wanted to do a double degree at university for criminology and psychology. That's what I was doing. I did that for a year and realized I'm shit with academics. Like doing essays and all this writing shit that you do in school, just regurgitating I was terrible at it. I was terrible.
Right.
I can learn things like very well, but it's more of hands-on.
Right.
So hence, you know, it makes sense where things ended up. But yeah, and then while I was at university, I was working 2 jobs. I was a dish pig at a cafe.
Right.
And then I was working at a place called Red Rooster, which is like Australia's KFC. So it's like a roasted chicken place. But I was there working there just as a cook while I was at university. So it was just kind of, just making my way and earn the cash. But it was at this cafe that while I was a dishy, the head chef kind of not convinced me, I guess I was inspired by his attitude as a chef in the kitchen.
Right.
Because he was the co-owner and head chef, and I just really enjoyed going to that place just when I wasn't at university, just working there like 2 or 3 nights a week. And just his fun attitude, you know, he was just like, however busy it got, it was just, you know, keen to smash it out. He was passionate. really interested. And I guess that wasn't something that I was used to seeing.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at TV, what's presented of chefs, that wasn't it. And it was just really flipped it. And so I guess that kind of got me thinking about a different creative outlet.
Right, right. And from there, where do you go get your first serious kitchen job? When you're like, fuck this, I'm going in.
Serious kitchen job. I mean, I was an apprentice at that cafe, but then I got my first job at a fine diner in Wollongong, that's kind of the next town. So I grew up in like a little country town south of Sydney, about an hour and a half, which was Shell Harbour, and then Wollongong is kind of the next city south of Sydney. And while I was full time at this cafe, I was also staging at a fine diner, which once a week. So on my day off from this cafe, I would go in and work for free at this other place just because I was so passionate about wanting to learn and
Right.
get new skills. So, and so I don't know. I guess it's so strange, right? Because I was an apprentice there as well, and this is only after like 3 years of being an apprentice. Why, you think it's a good idea to go work for free on top of the hours you're already hauling ass at this cafe? But I guess that's just kind of the passionate energy that you have, like I remember at this cafe, which was open 7 days, mind you, I wanted to still learn and experiment. So I would go into that cafe also on my day off. So while I was staging at this other restaurant, on the other day off that I had, I would go into this cafe at 1 a.m. in the morning because they were open from 6 a.m. till 4 p.m. And then I had a partner at the time, so I didn't want to kind of take away from the time I was already having with her.
Right.
So I would basically go into this cafe at 1 a.m. in the morning until like 5 a.m. because it was the only time it was quiet. So I had keys to the place, and I asked the head chef if I can just come in and experiment. And every week at 1 a.m., I would wake up at 12:30 in the morning, and I'd pack all my equipment that they didn't have there that I was buying for myself. I had my like 2 or 3 dishes and techniques that I wanted to experiment and try on.
Right.
And I remember going there. I remember putting on like Biggie Smalls in my car, just like getting myself hyped up with the hip hop and shit,
Mm-hmm.
and going in. And I was looking at these recipes the other day. And when I talk about looking at these old recipes that you just think, what the fuck was I doing? This is what I was working
These
on.
are the ones.
These are the ones. And and I remember going in there and just every week being like, had my 3, it could just be working on techniques like learning fluid gels or learning agar or, working with just anything like I remember there was one time I wanted to learn as many techniques as possible. So I would pick one ingredient like a beetroot or a celery, and I would ask myself, how many things can I do with just a beetroot? I'm not making a dish. It's not about making it taste good. It's just technique. It's going, what can I do? So if I take that beetroot, like you can roast it, and then from roasting it, you can dehydrate it and make, like a jerky or something, If not that, you juice the beetroot. What can you do after you juiced it? You can make pickles, you can make granitas, you can make fluid gels, you can make foams, all this sort of stuff just from juicing it. And I'd write down the technique, and then after that, I would go, well, cool. What can you use it raw? Cool. How do you use it raw? You can pickle it, you can, dehydrate it, all this sort of stuff. And then making meringues or syrups, all this sort of stuff, just so I could learn the technique of how to just use a beetroot. So,
mm-hmm. What books were you using?
Pardon?
What books? Where were you getting these recipes?
I wasn't. There was no. I was just Googling it at the time, so
Right,
there wasn't one particular book. It would just go, how do I make a foam, and then I would YouTube things on how to, use soy lecithin with the right amount of liquid,
right.
and then the equipment that I would need for that, and then there would be, and then it'd be like balancing it out and then setting it to make jellies or to make, all this sort of stuff, like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what I drilled myself into doing, which is just, it's crazy to look back on that now to think that I had that much enthusiasm. But and I would take that idea and then go, well, cool. Well, now I've done that with a beetroot. Let's get a peach or let's get a mango and then see what works. Can you roast a mango? Well, how does that taste like? Like just doing different things like making caviar with it or, mango chocolate, like just seeing what works and what doesn't work, like, and just kind of seeing where the boundaries are of the techniques that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just always took that with me. So every time I would get something new I've never seen before, I can go, cool, well, I've taken herbs and I've done 10 different things with herbs. What else can I do with it? Or what can't you do with it? And then, yeah. And so I guess from there, I took, that's where it took me to the fine diner, because they were doing techniques that I hadn't heard of before. And
Mm-hmm.
then that piqued me into doing it. And yeah, and I was staging there. And after a month, I think, or 6 weeks or something of staging there, they offered me the job. And yeah, and then there it was.
Right. Did you have a hard time leaving the diner?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. It was very hard initially,
Yeah.
because you're so grateful to that first chef for giving you that kind of opportunity,
Right.
and seeing that enthusiasm in you. Maybe it's also just an innocentness of going, oh, he looks like he'd be happy to get paid $400 a week for doing 60 hours, and
Right.
and not complain about it. Like,
Yeah.
it could just be that side of things. And I was happy to do it. I was like 19 or 20 years old, getting like $11 an hour. Like,
Yeah. You don't give a shit
you
at that point. You're just
you
like,
don't give a shit.
you just want to play the game.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, you just fucking love it. This is part of the job.
Yeah. What was the fine dining
and,
place called?
It was called Caveau. It was Caveau, yeah. So it was around for about 10 years, and then the two kind of sous chefs before that bought and took over the place,
Right.
and then made it become like a really modern Australian fine diner. So
Mm-hmm.
it was very Australian based, using very locally foraged and wild caught ingredients. So things like magpie goose, they were using, like, what else? Like sea bass, and then there was using things like wattle seed, bush tomato, Davidson plum, all
Mm-hmm.
of these really native Australian ingredients.
Right.
And we'd also forage ingredients as well. So that was something I'd never done before. So that was exciting, to go out and actually hand pick your own ingredients
Yeah.
from the beaches, from the forest, and then incorporate that. And that's where my style is now also. It's got a lot of native and forage ingredients.
So you're still foraging to this day?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just foraging today. I was
Okay.
getting local apple mint and fennel pollen.
All right. And then how far do you have to drive out of the city for that?
It's not far. I mean, a lot of the things, I just live by the water in Sydney, and a lot of things I just ride my bike, probably like a 15-20 minute ride, because there's a
Right.
lot of sea botanicals that grow along here. So
Okay.
your kelps, your sea lettuce, your Turkish rhubarb, warrigal greens, acacia, bottlebrush, all these Turkish rhubarb. I think, like, there's so many things just right in front of my doorstep.
Okay.
So
Got that. Cool. So you worked at the fine dining restaurant. How long were you there?
well, I was there for about 7 months, I think, and I was struggling really hard.
Right.
It was my first foray into skill dense, not much time cooking.
Right.
So the cafe was,
So if you make one mistake, your
very,
day's over.
yeah, or it was more that I would beat myself up
Right.
more than anything. I was
Okay.
very self-disciplined in that sense, where whatever I did, I really cared about it. And if I fucked up, I'd really give myself a hard time. And it wasn't anybody else. I've just kind of always been like that, because when I've committed to a project, it's really 110%. And so this fine diner was very skill dense, very time labor intensive, as fine diners are, which is a good thing, because you learn it's more time in the skill of things instead of just the flavor. The cafe was very, make something delicious and push it out. It was still very good and high quality in that sense, but it was just, you couldn't spend that much time perfecting that one thing.
Right.
And yeah, and I was just struggling. I think I was overthinking and being overwhelmed all the time, because I was still trying to refine all these skills, and I would just make little mistakes, and then I would have to start over again. And, like, these snacks were very intense, but it was a good thing. I look back on it now, and it's like learning how to swim.
Mm-hmm.
You throw yourself into the water, and that restaurant was like the first part where I was kind of drowning. And then the restaurants after that was like, okay, I've stopped, I've taken a breather. now I think I know what I'm doing now.
Right,
But there's
right.
always that first restaurant into that hectic restaurant that you're kind of a bit shit.
Hmm.
But it's that trial by fire, like it's it was that second of drowning in the water, I feel. So, but it was good. But these snacks were intense, like for example, we had 5 snacks uh that were on the degustation, and we had 5 regular, 5 vegetarian, and then the vegetarian and vegan were kind of similar, just maybe 1 or 2 elements different.
Right.
But like for example, one of these snacks was a prawn and soldiers, which was getting like they would get prawns in, we'd take the tops off, make prawn oil, and then you'd have to make prawn butter, set that, and then you would make prawn hollandaise. So I'd have to make that fresh every day just before service, like 50 or 20 minutes before,
Hmm.
and you'd have your little bowl, and you'd get your eggs, and then you'd whisk you get the prawn butter, and then you'd melt that, and then slowly add it in
Hmm.
because it's got to be at 38 degrees, right? This
Right.
hollandaise, and you'd be mixing that in, um, until you got the right amount of emulsification, and then you put it in your bottle, you keep it under a light, and then that would go into an egg. So every single person would get one egg, and you'd crack the top, so it was a
Right.
perfect top, and then you'd take that off, and
Right.
you'd take away the top. You'd have to empty and separate the egg whites for pastry, and then you'd keep the egg yolks for yourself. And then you'd have to take out the film that's inside the egg,
Right.
right? So
Little
and
tweezers.
no, it would be too delicate. These eggs were too delicate. So because they're like local organic eggs, they're not
Right.
like
Right.
store bought, right?
Yeah.
When the chickens are just forced to shit these things out. These are just chickens that have like chilled out, so their produce is more soft.
Right. Right.
So you'd have to use your fingers and get this like little film out and keep it in there. And every single person, if you had like 60 people, you'd do this. So one egg would take like a minute, just going from start to putting the egg, cracking it, taking it, separating, film. So you imagine if you're doing 60 people, that's just 1 hour on just the egg.
Hmm.
And then that hollandaise would go into that egg to serve. And then we're not done yet. You've got your your sesame toast.
Yeah.
So we'd get our toast in. You'd top the crust. You'd cut them into 3. So one bread would be like 3 soldiers.
Okay.
As you would when you're a kid.
Yeah.
You'd batter that with like an egg brush yolk, and then toast it, coat it in sesame seeds, and then you'd bake that in the oven for like, fucking what was it, like 180 degrees for like maybe 5 minutes or something like that, and then they would get that later. So then they would dip that into that snack,
Okay.
and then there would be like a vegetarian version of that. But that was just like one snack, and then I had to do 2 entrees or some shit as well.
What was the
Or one
vegetarian
entree.
option for the egg?
Oh, it was a completely different snack altogether.
Right. 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 Okay. Got you. Because you said the vegetarian version. I was like, oh no.
Yeah,
You know, there's some chef out there who'd be like, we got to make eggshells out of fucking broccoli puree, and you know what I mean? It's like, okay, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. So it was that kind of denseness, but
Yeah.
like I loved it. When I look back, I loved it. But yeah, it was very difficult.
What time would you come in every day? Start.
Because they to give them credit, they were very good at wanting to make a good work-life balance.
Right.
But to them, it was a 2 p.m. start. Right, this wasn't even early. Like you'd think with the prep I had, you'd be starting at 9 a.m. But they only wanted you to come in at 2 p.m.
Yeah, because they want you to be in the
asked
shit.
if I could. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As soon as you walked in, you're in the shit. So like we opened at 6 p.m. So you only had like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Minus like half an hour for a quick
It's
bite
like
to eat, which I almost never stood. I never like sat down.
It's like a
I'd be eating
stampede.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Man. And like because like they never gave you the keys, so you only got there when the head chefs got there. Like whereas at my previous job, the cafe, I had the keys, so I could go in an hour early or half an hour early
Right.
or whatever.
Now what?
So
No, go
sorry, I'm
ahead.
just gonna
Yeah.
take something out of the
Yeah.
oven.
Yeah. No worries, bro.
I don't know if you heard that.
It's a real chef podcast here. Got shit in the oven. It's got some shit in the oven for his tasting tomorrow.
Right, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries, dog. No worries.
But yeah, basically I was in the shit every day with that place.
Yeah, I bet. So you came in at 2. Did you ever have that fucking stampede to the pots and pans because everybody's trying to get everything they need? We
Yeah.
always had that. If you like
Um,
showed up to the pot rack maybe 15 minutes after the shift, there were no pots for you. You
yeah,
had to
yeah.
just wait. You
I
know?
felt like that was always me. I felt like that I always somehow had all the equipment going at once. Because like as soon as I got there, I'd be having to do like 5 things. Because like we're even milling our own flour to make our own bread.
Mm,
So I'd have to mill that like every day or once every 2 days because they would never let you do more than a week, more than 2 days, whatever. So like I'd have to be milling my own flour to make my own bread for everybody else as well. So that would be the first thing. So I'm taking this KitchenAid and someone would always need the KitchenAid, but there was only one KitchenAid. But I'd have this thing milling my flour every day
right.
while I was like,
And
and
milling
then I was
flour
like,
takes a shit ton of time.
it takes a lot of time,
Yeah.
man. And then you have to mill it as well yourself, just so it's fine. And then you'd be making your own bread and then proofing it and baking it for that day. It's crazy. And then after that KitchenAid was done milling the flour, I also had to use it to churn our own like Jersey milk to make our own butter as well.
Right.
So so it was just like crazy. So like I feel I
So,
was like holding.
okay. So, wait a minute. These motherfuckers got you making bread and butter?
Yeah, dude, making this shit all from scratch. It's
That's good
crazy.
training.
Like, oh, dude, I was like, it was probably, I've never felt this often in my career, but
Right.
there was early on where you would have moments of like your body is literally convulsing, shaking because you're
Mm,
so worried that it's not going to happen or it's not going to work out or you're not going to be good enough because you've got service at 6
right.
and you've got a shit ton of you've got a shit ton of work to do and you don't know if you're going to do it and you can feel the heart palpitations,
Right.
you can feel your hands trembling because you're not sure if today's going to be the day where you don't make it.
Right.
Like it happened all the time there. It was crazy. I,
Did
I
you
look back now. I look back now and laugh. It's all good fun. But at that time, it was crazy.
was there ever a day that you didn't make it?
Um, there was a day where I didn't have enough prep, and they wouldn't accept it. And so in the middle of service, I'll explain this dish. So I had to forage my own garnishes for these dishes.
Right.
So
Yeah.
before I got to work, I would be getting saltbush,
Mm-hmm.
like make powder, nasturtiums, all this sort of stuff. And there's this one dish which was cured mackerel in its own sea salt. So you'd get your own ocean water and you'd reduce that to make your own salt,
Right.
and then you'd cure the mackerel in that salt. Um, and then each person would, this is an entree, and you'd get 5 pieces of mackerel. You'd have to fry chestnuts as well. So you'd fry them, open it up, thinly slice it, and then deep fry them at 150 to get golden. And they would get like 3 or 5 of those. Um, you'd get like oil, and then just before service, you'd juice a bit of rocket. So it'd be really vibrantly green. And then they would garnish that with, I think it was, yeah, it was like 3 or 5 nasturtiums as well. I think it was
Yeah.
depending on the size of the dish. Like you would get more or less depending on whatever, if they got a 5 course, 7 course, or whatever. And so every day I would have to go and pick these nasturtiums. And, let's say you're doing 40 people, I'd have to pick between 120 and 160 nasturtiums. And they'd have to be all the same size, like a 20-cent coin, and be perfect. There would be no green, there'd be no yellow fading, no, none of that kind of, it looks shit. It's got to be that nice green. So I'd be going in these massive bushes every day, just like finding these nasturtiums and cutting them in a container. And there was one time we were really, really busy. We probably had maybe like 35 covers or 40 covers. It was a really small place in the town, and I'd picked nasturtiums enough for like maybe like 50 people or something like that, right? And it was one of those days where just out of nowhere you're getting all these bookings, like really last minute bookings, and you can prep all you want, but you just can't prep for those last minute things,
Right.
especially when you're a fine diner. You're not making things bulk all the time.
Right.
Most of the time you're making it fresh for that day. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, we've gotten like fucking, I don't know, we're like 10 bookings within the hour before service. So I'm having to go back and do my snacks again, like do like 10 more snacks because I've maybe done maybe 5 or 6 more because this place wouldn't, they would hate you if you had too much wastage. Every
Right.
day which is fair enough. It's a small business. I get that. And yeah, we got like 10, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm trying to already keep up on all the other shit that I have to do more of. And it got to like the second half of service, and we got the second lot of bookings coming in, and I'm thinking in my head, I used to be so quiet there because I'd be thinking too much, and I'm like, okay, I've got enough snacks, that's great, I've set them up. Now I'm on to plating my entrees, and I'm like, as these people are sitting down, I'm just kind of finishing the garnishes, and I've got putting all these nasturtiums on, and then I get towards the end of it, and I realize I don't have enough nasturtiums for the last like 2 or 3 people or something.
Right.
And I'm sitting there thinking, like, you fucking idiot, you moron, all this sort of stuff. And in my head, I'm trying to figure out a way in which maybe I can, like, be that shifty apprentice and maybe I can, like, push it out and they don't know. So maybe I'll do, like, one less nasturtium on everybody's plate just so I can make up for the last 3, like
Right.
something like that. And I'm like, no, because if he sees it, I'll get into more shit and I'll be like I'll just look like an idiot and they won't trust me. So I can't do that. But I need to tell him. And then just that gut feeling of going to tell your head chef that you don't have enough of something was already hard enough because it's like telling them it's just they don't want to hear that shit,
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, I got to tell this guy. Eventually I work up the courage and some of these entrees are starting to go, mind you. So I don't have much time now. I've kind of
Oh,
stitched
god
myself up.
damn. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't have much time to figure my shit out. Now, had I told him maybe earlier, there could have been a solution done in the time, but because I just hadn't worked up the courage,
Yeah.
and I turn to him, I go, chef, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm going to have enough nasturtiums for these last 3 people. And I'm shaking. And I remember this, like it's churned into my brain, this memory. I look up at him and he looks back at me and he goes, what are you going to do about it? And that's all he said. It's all he needed to say. And I just thought, okay. Like, I think I get what he's saying. So I took off my apron. I hung it up. And I ran outside in the middle of the night looking for nasturtiums in people's front yards, literally running around Wollongong streets, like all my black gear, my fucking chef clogs. And he's like, I'm like, and then I was like, I forgot to take a container with me with a moist towel. And I'm fucking running around these streets, man. I'm going to people's houses with my phone torch in one hand, trying to pick these perfect nasturtiums, right? I need maybe 16 more or some shit for these next 4 people. And like one garden wouldn't have enough of the perfect same size. So I'd have to run with like my hand full with this one and running to get other nasturtiums. And I'm like trying to keep track of time, try not to get run over while I'm running around these streets. And I'm like, fuck, like maybe he's got like 5 minutes tops. And I was just running everywhere like a lunatic, just trying to get this produce so these people can have their plates. And I got back there and there was maybe like 6 plates left or like 8 plates left, and I just gotten back in time. And fuck me, that was like it was the last dish of the night too. And I was like, I remember putting them on, thinking like,
you made it, chef.
Fuck? It was so crazy, man, so crazy. But yeah, so I guess to answer your question. Yeah, it's been pretty fucking wild.
Yeah.
That's probably as far as it got for me. That's
Right.
probably as far as it got for me.
And then, so you left there, and where do you go from there?
Yeah, well, I left there, and I was still seeking more experience and more, So I basically just packed my car and I organised all these stages up and down the coast of Australia. So I worked in about close to a dozen places for free over the span of about 3 months. And I would go in and I remember there was a place in the country called Echelot, and I would go there like 2 days a week for 2 weeks. And then I would go work at other places for 2 days for 2 weeks. So because I'd saved up all this money and I just wanted experience. So in Sydney, I think I worked at these places like Paperbark, Bentley Restaurant, Yellow. And then I drove up to Queensland, Australia, and I staged at places like Urbane, which was like a 3-hatted restaurant at the time, the Euro, Gorge, or Gauge, I should say. Yeah, and I worked for free. I just purely just for the sake of wanting to learn. I just slept on my brother's couches who were living in Brisbane. I was, staying at places in Sydney, and I just worked for free. And I remember every day, just getting all these recipes. And at the end of every day, I'd just be writing them down and just learning and reciting. And yeah, and then one of them eventually offered me a job, which happened to be Yellow, which was it was a vegetarian fine diner, the
Mm-hmm.
two-headed place, and then during COVID it went vegan. But that place offered me the job, and yeah, and I was there for about 4 years.
Right. Awesome, man. Hell yeah. So 4 years, did you become sous chef in that time?
Yeah, I finished up as a sous chef,
Okay, awesome.
so
Um,
that was really cool.
was it a little less intense than your prior kitchen?
Um, Initially, I think it was probably just as intense,
Right.
but the hours were longer, so you could get the shit done.
You just show up at
So
like 9 in the morning.
yeah, the weekends. I remember the weekends were about 9 a.m. till midnight, and then the weekdays were like 11 a.m. So that was better. So I was happy with that because I'm like, fuck, like, when you're a chef, those hours really aren't that bad.
Right.
Like I never looked back and thought I worked too much because I really enjoyed it. Like I really loved it. Like I've never taken a job at a place for the money. Like I've never taken a job for the place for the money. It's got to be purely it's satisfying my love for what I do.
Right.
And if I can't do what I love, then I won't do it. So yeah, but that place, like, it was just as intense. Like, I mean, I beg it was just vegetarian and it being vegan, but it was still had that level of technical difficulty. It still had that same level of, you know, attention to detail. Like we'd have a crudités on the menu, and you'd have to go in and clean 100 of like five different things properly. So you'd be getting a turning knife and getting the dirt out of these fresh cherry bell radishes or carrots, and you'd be peeling them, and
Mm-hmm.
and they have to be sitting in ice water. So like those jobs take like a long time, and yeah, but starting at 11 wasn't so bad. But even then, some days they just get so busy. You'd be doing like 100 cover Saturday like dinners when you got like 40 for lunch. So it
Mm-hmm.
was always that balance of trying to do service and then prep for that night as well. So
Right. Got you. Okay. Um, and then you stay there 4 years. How old are you? Where are we in your trajectory? When you
I'm,
first get to
I'm
the restaurant?
yeah, I'm 26
You're
now.
about 26. Okay. Got you. When you're at this restaurant, you stay there for 4 whole years.
Yeah.
Is this something that you planned on?
No, not really. I didn't plan on getting the job there when I was staging there. I just really liked its difference.
Right.
Um, I was vegan about 3 years into my chefing career. So while I was at the cafe, I went vegan. So the idea of wanting to work there would have been great at this place, but I think at that time I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel like I was good enough to work at
Mm-hmm.
that level. Being a two-hatted place, I just kind of came off the back of struggling at a one-hatted place in the country. So I didn't ever think that I would be good enough to work there. But when they offered the job, I was, obviously naturally chuffed. So I gave it a whirl and just said, look, I'm still traveling to Queensland and staging. So, if I can start in 2 months, then that'd be great. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I guess it just that whole time it was still intriguing enough over those 4 years. The menu was changing often. We had a different head chef come in later, so his approach to cooking was very different to the last one, and
Mm-hmm.
and all these things, including like they were awesome with wanting me to bring in my foraging and me to bring in my wild ingredients. So there was always a place for me to always be experimenting and trying new things with those ingredients and having that space in which I could go, cool, well, how can I use this ingredient differently to put on the menu next time, and always giving that to the head chefs, and then they like that and I want to work with that. So there was always something new there, which was good.
Okay, so it kept you enticed.
Yeah.
And then when you made sous chef, how was the dynamic between the cooks that you worked with, came up with, and now you're sous chef? Now you're their boss.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, man, because like, and I don't know whether it's a change in the pandemic as well, because a lot of chefs were very different from pre-pandemic to now. I think a lot of the a lot of chefs took time and self-reflection and wanted to maybe find a balance in the type of food they were doing and wanted to slow down a bit and do what they really cared about doing instead of just hauling ass at a good esteemed restaurant, maybe for the name of it or something. Or, so maybe they really wanted to focus on what they love, which meant scaling
Right.
things down. And so there's just been this really change of wave of chefs. Yeah, maybe now I'm just speaking maybe for me. I don't know if other people feel this way as well, but it seems different. The chefs that I worked with and grew up with seem different to the chefs now. Not all of them, but just I guess the chefs starting now,
Mm-hmm.
in their career, that maybe they've got a different mindset of what they thought being a chef was. And because the industries can't be as hard as they used to be because of the lack of, I don't think restaurants really have that control like they used to. They didn't have that power like they used to. A lot of the
Right.
power has gone on to the chefs and the workers so they can, I remember speaking to people that are now asking chefs what days they want off. Like this never used to be a thing. Like you don't just start a job off like, hey, just need to ask what days if you need days off, what days are those, so we can cater to you.
Right.
All this sort of stuff, like, or what salary is beneficial to you. It's like, no, like these are the hours, this is the salary you get. You either don't or we get somebody else, like
Right.
that's kind of what I feel like it used to be. And now it's this change of now all these chefs have this power so they can not work as hard as they want to, or work as hard as they wish to, or not wish to, get whatever money they want, always ask for pay rises all the time. It's crazy. I only recently asked for a pay rise like 6 years into my chefing career because I just never thought that was, I don't know, in my head, I just always thought that you'd get a pay rise when you'd worked hard enough.
Right.
You never think that you should ask for a pay rise. In my head, it's like you get what you deserve. So,
Right.
So like that was, but now everybody's asking for pay rises like once a year, like it's an office job,
Mm-hmm.
and getting reviewed, and it's crazy now. So yeah, so the chefs are different in that sense. I think they're few and far between. The chefs that were below me, there was still passionate chefs. There were still chefs that were interested in learning, but maybe didn't want to put in the hours
Right.
that I would, just out of your own time, not because we forced them to. Like I would get when I was sous chef, regardless of my hours, I would just show up at 11 a.m. every day, and I would finish, like, even if the roster said 2 p.m. or whatever it is now, because things have gotten official. They need, I don't know if they've noticed this, seen this in where you're at, but everything has to be on the books now. Everyone's hours now, so
Yeah.
so like you can't just, back in the day, they would print something on a piece of paper and be like, this is the time you start.
Right.
And that was it. There wasn't this is the time you're working to and this is the time you're expected to finish. There was none of that. Like now it's like, it has to be official because, I don't know, I guess people get audited for this shit now.
Right.
So
What happens in Australia with the like overtime and things like that?
well, most chefs are on salary, so
Right.
overtime's not really a thing unless you're like casual part-time.
Mm-hmm. So
unless
everyone is on salary.
No, I mean, like if you're full-time, you're probably going to be on a salary.
Okay. So it's not like,
like,
so meaning like, okay, you're going to make 40K a year and that's what you're going to make, kind of thing.
yeah, basically. Yeah. And regardless of your hours, like
Right.
in Australia, a standard chef wage is probably about like 60K.
Yeah.
Between 55 and 65K. I don't know what that translates to in US, but that's probably about between 1,000 and 1,500 kind of a week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a bad wage. But yeah, like most places, like it's kind of unheard of to go full time somewhere and get paid hourly, unless you're working at like a hotel chain.
Right.
That were very like that, then probably. But a lot of the, like owner kind of chef restaurants just do things salary. I think it's just easier.
Oh, that's insane. Over here, there's laws against doing salary for everyone.
Really?
Yeah, you like need to have a manager in place to, or it needs to be a manager that has a salary, and you can only have like, I think it's like a manager per so many amount of hourly workers. right, to
Wow.
justify having a manager. So,
Right.
and I mean, the California labor laws are fucked all over the place. I mean, you, if you work more than 5 hours without a break, they have to pay you an extra hour.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like all these, when I first became a chef, it wasn't about, oh, let's do nice food or new food or let's go to the farmer's market. It was, hey, can you go take your break? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I think that is probably why we're going to go down in flames before you guys. You know what I mean? Just because we
Yeah.
got a bunch of hourly fuckers over here that, are like, oh, it's time for my break. And like you were saying, shit has changed because I was never like, oh, you know what? I didn't get a break today. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that's how these new guys are these days. But, we're
Yeah.
changing with the times.
Yeah.
However, I do feel like there should be a space for restaurants that are hard.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think that should go away. I think there should be a few restaurants in the world that are allowed to be fucking super hard,
Yeah. Yeah.
because out of those kitchens is what comes the best chefs, some of the greatest chefs, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%. And it's interesting because it's like some of these chefs care more about the benefits of their job rather than the quality of what they're actually there to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad. Like, of course, each to their own, Like, and I'm not saying that all chefs are chefs because they love what they do, Like some of them just genuinely do it because they just need money to pay their bills, and like that's fine. Like everyone's a chef for their own reason, and you can't ever judge that. But yeah, it's just hard because because it is a team sport, and especially at the fine dining level, it's not like a pub or a cafe. Like at a fine dining level, there are standards that need to be kept, and when you're starting to get kind of more of these chefs that are outweighing the passionate ones that are putting in all the effort, when it's a team sport, everything kind of starts to go down, Like instead of it being up here, all the with the odd person who kind of maybe doesn't care, who gets yelled at every day, like there's kind of more of these people that don't care and they've tipped it and it's kind of come down a bit. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, but you've just got to navigate through that because it's been tough, for everybody. It's hard to now that a lot of restaurants and the standard of these restaurants have maybe had to adapt because of that staffing issue as well. So it's a shame because there are a lot of restaurants that, especially where the head chef or the owners are so passionate and have so much knowledge that can't now be at their full potential because of what they're working with,
Yeah.
and that's really sad.
It's things like as simple as chicken stock. You can't
Yeah,
make a chicken stock and or a revolving door of good stocks for your restaurant in 8 hours. It
yeah,
doesn't work that way. You need people working round the clock to make that shit. I mean, at
yeah,
Meadowood, we would put stocks up at night, and you'd have to wait until they, fucking simmered or boiled or whatever, and you left them, and they went all night, and then a guy came in at 6 in the morning and
yeah.
strained them and reduced them the rest of the way. It's like, how do you make a fucking good sauce if
Yeah.
everyone has to go home in 8 hours? You
It's
know?
it's crazy, man. Like I don't know. I guess that's the people I love to be around. There's just those people that don't really give a fuck about the time.
Yeah.
Like that's that kind of infectious energy that I
Mm-hmm.
like to be around, that I like to work with, Like fuck, like I like even just to call back to that cafe, like just with the sense of ownership that you don't see much often, that I really loved being around was I remember being at this cafe. It was like the week of Christmas and we're getting pumped every day. Like, obviously all these people have got their time off work, so they're going out to the local beach, and this cafe was by the beach, and we're getting pumped every day. So every day we'd just be getting sunken on prep.
Right.
And I remember going out. It was like maybe the 23rd or something on a Friday, and going out to Wollongong for a dance with my ex partner, and be going out drinking, getting pissed, having a great time. Um, and it'd be like 2 a.m., or 2:30, and we're rolling out, and like I was driving, so I wasn't that pissed. I was probably having maybe like one or two drinks an hour, and I remember just like getting home and sitting in my car, and it'd be like 3 a.m. And I remember turning to my partner at the time, thinking, "Hey, are you cool if I go to work?" And she's like, okay. And I've been like, yeah, like, I'm sorry, but we're so busy, and I need to get some shit in the oven cooking because we're gonna get pumped. So yeah, I'll drop you off to bed, but I gotta go in. And she was like, okay. And then I remember like kissing her goodbye, and then just got in my chef clothes and just went
Yeah.
straight to work at like 3 a.m. in the morning. And I'm like, I was checking the brisket because we'd usually like brisket in overnight. And I was checking that, and then I'd be like, nah, I think I got to get another brisket in. And I just opened the whole place up, and the head chef rolled in at like 6 a.m. Be like, he used to call me Luscious at the time. He's like, oh, Luscious, what the fuck? What's going on, man? And I'm like, hey, man, sorry. We're busy. I know the prep list is huge, so I just thought I'd get in and tackle it in early. It's like, fuck yeah, man, respect. And
Yeah.
then we just like have coffees, and that kind of camaraderie and team that I love, like you want to be that chef that you want to work with, So
Yeah.
so yeah, and I remember that. I remember many a times, just countless, going in just on your time off, just because it was just you wanted to do it, and you're part of a good solid team, and yeah, it was good, man. It's
Yeah.
good reflecting on it. It makes you smile.
Yeah, for sure. Now, over there in restaurants, hotels, things like that, do you have a lot of migration of workers from other countries?
Oh, 100%.
And what is the largest group?
It's pretty hard to say because Australia's very multicultural. I've
Right,
never worked in a kitchen that has been predominantly one ethnicity.
right.
But we've had, any one time, I've worked in restaurants where it's like 10% Australians, and the rest are either Korean, from Brazil, from India,
hmm
like,
So
from
it seems
like
like,
Europe.
yeah, so it seems like it's easy to get sort of a work visa there, or at least
It's very
easier
easy.
than at
Now,
other
now
countries.
especially, yeah, now especially they're churning working visas in a matter of like days now.
Really?
I remember hearing something that they're churning working visas in a bullshit amount of time in Australia now. I think it's just to kind of get the economy back going.
Right. Oh, yeah, because you guys, I guess, stayed shut down for longer than everybody,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's pretty bad.
I got you. Heard that. Um, so I don't know where we're at in your timeline. I think we're at the second fine dining restaurant. Does pandemic hit while you're at one of these restaurants?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So while I was at Yellow, about 2 years in is when the pandemic hit. So I started there at about 2018, and then it was about 2020, early 2020 is when it hit.
Hmm.
And then hence where I started that podcast as well, because the restaurant was shut for about 2 or 3 months or whatever. So
Right.
um,
So in like June
yeah,
of 2020?
yeah, it was from about March to June, the first one that we had.
Right.
We locked down for 3 months, and then it went from June. We were open for about another 12 or 15 months,
Mm-hmm.
and then we shut down for another 3 months after that
Got you.
because we
Okay.
had like a second wave that got really, really bad or something.
Right. And then to go back to this, you were talking about your partner, your ex partner, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I find that a chef's world is full of ex partners. Is there anything that you can, any type of advice that you could give to any of these young cooks, young chefs out here? Because I know me, like I've made the mistake of putting so much into the kitchen that I, shut the person out. And I'm like,
Right.
not, you know what I mean? I'm not present. You know what I mean? And you look back on it and you're like, well, this person's like kind of there trying to be my partner and trying to like be there for me. I should, definitely send my attention more to that. Um, do you have any difficulties in the relationship because you were cooking?
Um,
Because you were working so much?
I don't, I don't think so, unless she was remarkably good at keeping it to herself. But I don't think so. I think you can be really lucky in the world and find someone who's very understanding and
Mm-hmm.
can feel your passion for something and knows that it's very real,
Mm-hmm.
whether they have that same passion or not. But you can really feel someone's infectious energy. So I think in her case, she just knew that it gave me so much joy and could rest easy knowing that it wasn't just a life sucking hobby that was taking me away from her all the time.
Right, like video games or
Like
something.
something like that. Like I would still come home from, after like a 12 or 14-hour shift
Yeah.
and still have so much energy. I wouldn't ever come home and, don't get me wrong. There were still some Mondays when I'd wake up and we would be speaking and I would be falling asleep mid-conversation because I was tired. Don't get me
Right.
wrong. That's still a very real part of being in that, because you're trying to, every day you're not getting as much sleep as you need to, and then come your day off, your 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 brain is shutting off for you.
Yeah, it's just like you need to do this.
Yeah, your brain's like, dude, man, like you're not sleeping, you don't want to sleep, I don't give a fuck. And it's just, they'd be like on the it'd be like a Monday night, and like we'd be like cooking together, and like we'd be eating dinner and be like talking, and like my eyes would be shutting off, and she'd be wide awake, but at the end of every day, I would come home and I would still have so much energy, like obviously because I guess it's the adrenaline of service,
Yeah.
but like that's a huge thing.
You
So
come
wouldn't be
home
getting
to
bed for, like,
really late, but you come to a quiet house, everybody's already sleeping. You're
exactly.
You're like tiptoeing around, you
Yeah.
know. You got iron your chef coat, do your prep list for the next day. Dude, I ironed chef coats for probably like 10 years before I didn't have to iron them anymore.
Dude, crazy. But I would still have so much energy, but I think I was really lucky in that aspect, that I was with somebody who could really sense that energy and felt happy knowing that gave me so much joy. Whether I was, but with that said, like obviously when you're with somebody, I look back at it now and maybe hope that you'd find someone who probably has that much passion and energy for something else of their own.
Right.
That would, I think, be my tip or advice, if that person that you're with is just as energy fueled for something else. So, but with that said, that's not really up to you. That's kind of up to that person as to whether they are content.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't ever want to think that because they're not at your level of energy or enthusiasm for something that they're not happy with their life. Like people are content at different levels. So that's something that you also have to grow to understand and respect, that if they enjoy reading a book every night, or if they enjoy playing video games, then that's just what makes them happy.
Right.
So you kind of have to always keep that in the back of your mind. But yeah, but being a chef is a pursuit where you throw everything at it. If you really care about it, and it's not just for the money, it's like that scene from Whiplash, right? Where that guy's talking about, it pulls his girlfriend to a diner, and he's talking about he's breaking up with her because he realizes that in order for him to be at his full potential, he doesn't want to upset the girlfriend that he's currently with.
Right.
And he has this like whole monologue which you could easily recite and take on as if you are saying those words as a chef, because it's very multifaceted what he's saying to anybody who's in the pursuit of excellence. And he sits it down and is like, I want to be the best. It's going to consume my life, and I don't want things to get in the way of hurting you. And I know that you love me, and I still love you. And maybe after all this, if things, settle down and we're still in love with each other, then maybe something can happen someday. But right now, I'm getting deeper and deeper, and I don't want to hurt you or have your love affect and battle with my passion for this, because this is, my life kind of thing. And he has this whole thing, and this is him wanting to be a drummer, right? And and that was very relatable in that sense, that if you really give a fuck about being a chef, you will throw 110% into it, and that will consume your life.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. It can be a good thing, but just know that if you're going to be in a relationship with somebody, that they are going, you either need to communicate with them that they are going to be second best, because that's the reality of it, right? That's the reality, that becomes all you're thinking about, not that the partner is all you're thinking about. And it sounds like a really piece of shit thing to say, but it's just, I don't know, maybe it's an addiction. Maybe being wanting to be the best at what you do is kind of this sick addiction. It's not sick, but it's become kind of its own addiction, right? Because it's all you're thinking about. You're drilling all this money and time into it, and you don't really know what's going to end up or what's going to be at the end of all this.
Right.
It's just the idea of being the best, but then where does that lead you?
Right.
So
I say almost like when you get 3 Michelin stars, like it's almost a gift and a curse. Like, yeah, you've achieved your 3 Michelin stars, but in cooking, there is no higher award. You know what I mean? So I feel like the people that get 3 stars have a sense of emptiness because they're like, this is it. I've reached the pinnacle of my career. You know what I mean? And then you have to uphold your stars, obviously. And there's definitely more things that you could do to fulfill your happiness within cooking. And I think a lot of it is like charity work, you know, and like donating meals and things like that. But in terms of award, James Beard Award, whatever, we all know that 3 Michelin stars is what anybody gives a fuck about and what
yeah,
is willing to make people fly all over the country or all over the world just to go to your spot, you
yeah.
know? What do you think about the validity of Michelin stars?
I think they're a great marketing tool.
Right.
I think they can do amazing things for restaurants for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also that reality of what they can and can't do, and the reality that maybe one of these tools can completely obliterate a restaurant or a chef
Right.
or ruin their business sounds really sad to me. Just because maybe they didn't like their one experience there, that one person didn't like their one experience, and so they've now redirected their attention for this high class restaurant onto something else for that time being.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a shame, but it really does have its place in a positive sense because it can highlight many restaurants that don't have that PR, that don't have that public kind of advertising or that tool, to get out there. And so them putting in all their hard work, it can really change the lives of so many chefs. And that I've thought about it a lot where it's like, when you weigh up the pros and cons, sometimes that can be more good than the bad, so yeah, like when it comes to Michelin, like it's just nothing can be perfectly positive all the time, and I think that's the reality. But at the end of the day, it's hard because they are getting rated by it's kind of rated by not it's not it's kind of rated by customers. I don't know Michelin specifically, but in the Good Food Guide, all those people that rate the restaurants, they're not chefs, so when they're rating things at a technical level, it doesn't really make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then to how they've gotten so much validity and power and reputation is kind of daunting. It would be like someone like who really likes music going and sitting in on concertos and then critiquing them, but they don't know how to do any of the things.
They don't know how to play a fucking instrument.
They don't like. They maybe know how to play a few songs on guitar.
Yeah.
Like maybe some Smoke on the Water or Seven Nation Army or some shit.
Yeah.
Like they know they know the strings, but they don't know the technical, and they don't know the time that someone's put in. They don't know the story. They don't know the emotion behind everything. And maybe because someone got a note off, that's it. That's not good enough. It's not three hats or something like that, or maybe the ambience, or maybe the crowd itself. Like, and they're just rating it, and it's just like, it's just hard. Like I would love a rating system that's done by the chefs, and I've thought about this so much. Like I would love an awards night that's been rated by peers. Like it's like the scientific papers. They're all peer reviewed. They're reviewed by people in that same industry,
Right.
so it can be validated, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't just give them off to 100 people in the public and go, "Can you validate this?" And they're like, "Yeah, honestly, I don't think it's going to work because it doesn't make sense to me." And it's like, like I would like a peer reviewed chef thing, like that would be cool because like of course it could be biased, like
Right.
most systems probably are inherently biased. Someone knows someone in the rating industry that can sway something or other. Like it's just in everything. It's not food specifically. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like this is just life. This is just politics. You know, and so I think that would be fun. You know, I think I would really love to be uh, spoken about from my peers as well. Like that would be really cool. You know, it's like someone you look up to and they're saying awesome things about you. You know, for this award system, like that would be really fucking cool.
Right.
And I think a lot of chefs would really dig that. You know, like getting a word from one of their like local chefs that they look up to, like in an awards thing because they're part of this system where they go out and they do their reviews and maybe highlight 5 new chefs that open up restaurants and shit. Like I think that would be sick, and I would love more than nothing to create that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But chefs don't really have that much time, so
Right.
but it would be sick.
There's a food blogger that I was talking to recently, and she says she's like, "Oh well, I go to the restaurant 3 times if I don't like it, or if even if she does like it, she goes 3 times before she formulates an opinion about the place." And I'm like, that's a good way to do it. And I know Michelin does that a little bit. They go multiple times, different people go, and then based on that, they assign the award. So I think they have a kind of a cool system. And to be in the 21st century and not know any of their fucking identifications, we don't know who they are. I think that's pretty cool. You know, in a
Yeah,
world where you know who everybody is, right?
yeah. And I have to give the Michelin credit in that aspect where they've kept that anonymity very well, and I think that makes it void of the politics. I mean, a lot of it. I'm not going to say it's 100%, but it keeps it void of that, and I think that's the best system to go with. Um, yeah, yeah, I think that's just the best system to go with for sure.
Right. I heard you and Andre talk about some shows. Did you watch the menu?
Yeah, dude, have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Dude,
What'd you think?
I'm
I thought it
like
was
you,
really
man. I loved it.
yeah, it was really well done. Really well done.
Yeah,
Um, I definitely didn't think it was a horror movie. I wasn't scared. You know what I mean? There wasn't any time where I was like, "Oh my god." You know, were you scared at all? I mean,
I was shocked. I was shocked when that one chef did that one thing on that tarp, and I don't know if I want to spoil
right,
it.
right, right, right. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. I know it's not horror,
Yeah.
but I was pretty
Dude, I
shocked. I
mean,
think I was.
at this point, spoil the shit. Like, hey, who gives a fuck, dude? The movie's been out. Like, if you haven't watched the menu and you're in the food industry, like, it's your fucking fault. You know,
Yeah.
like at the end
That
of
is
the day,
true. That
you
is
know.
true. Well, all right, okay. So I think I did definitely jump when the guy shot himself.
Right. I didn't expect that either. But that's
I did not
literally
expect that.
like I know chefs that have made, cooks go out to the dining room and say sorry to the guests for fucking up their dishes, and that's what
Yeah,
that felt like to me. It
yeah,
was like this is exactly what it feels like, in not a literal sense of what
yeah.
you're doing. Cool. The menu. Have you seen the new show Pressure Cooker on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen the pressure cooker.
So they got this
I'm not
show
doing it.
where it's like chefs are living together in a home and then doing the cooking competition. I got to check it out because I did an audition for that show but did not make it. But
Oh wow.
but the way that they said they were going to do the show was that it was a dating show, and I was like, it's a chef dating show. Now that I look
Oh,
at it on Netflix, it's not that. But going into the interview, being like, I don't want to be on a fucking dating show. Like I didn't take it too, crazy seriously. And
right.
now I'm wishing I had because I was like, damn, I could have been on fucking Netflix, bro. You know what I mean? It's like do it all for the podcast, baby. Fuck it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
do you like
Yeah,
Top?
but that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go.
Do you like Top Chef?
I don't think I've seen it. I don't see many cooking shows.
Right.
I don't know if that's what Top Chef is.
Yeah. It's a
Okay.
cooking
Yeah,
competition.
I don't watch many cooking shows specifically. I'm more kind of what I like really enjoy like exposés on chefs.
Okay. So
More
like
so like
the
Chef Table, I feel is really good
right. I
because I
feel
feel
like
like that.
it's a bit too emotional. You know? It's
Yeah, but
like
I think the first 2 seasons were really, really excellent.
right, the first 2 seasons were good, but I will say that every cooking show now, I was even watching another one, I think it's called Street Food on Netflix.
Yeah,
And it's always like this very sad, somber, like, oh, we have to work all the time and we can miss holidays. And it's like,
Right.
Those are the fucking facts. Like you knew this coming into it.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
can't tell you how many times in culinary school they were like, "You're not going to see your family. You're going to work on Christmas. The holidays don't exist." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Cool, I'm okay with that. I'm fine."
Yeah, yeah.
And then when people are like complain about it, and I'm like, "You know how it is. You know how it is here." And
Yeah,
it's like uh I always give my cooks the day off if they ask for it. Like if they want a day off, whatever. If it's Christmas, whatever, bro, we'll figure it out,
yeah.
But you know, you can't expect to work in a place that is that seasonal and then have that time off. When
Yeah.
the place tells you like, "Hey, you're going to fucking work these hours." Then you turn around and act surprised like, "Oh, really?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's hard to navigate in this world now where you got to give everything, everybody everything basically.
Yeah.
I saw you interviewed Orlando.
Yeah.
How was that? He is, I think, the best chef in the world, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Like honestly, one of the best.
Yeah.
Did you know the restaurant was going to close before you talked to him?
So they didn't necessarily no, they didn't necessarily say that to me, but they definitely talked a lot about that the restaurant itself was going to change.
Right.
Whether that meant closing, but they didn't say that to me specifically. I remember them talking about, you know, it's moving and progressing onto something.
Right.
So, but that was not really something. Yeah, it was not really something that they said to me specifically, but I guess it shocked me as well because everything they had going there was like excellent, And I've talked about this with Andre on the PSA podcast, and when I was there in Copenhagen, it was just like really well-oiled, fun place to be.
Right.
The chefs there worked hard. They gave a shit. They communicated well. There was just a good energy and vibe. Their attention and love to the produce that they had there was just beautiful, and I
Yeah.
just love the whole ethos of it. It's very silo. Like that's very kind of
That's the
that
future.
minimal. Yeah,
Silo is the future. I
yeah,
see that
and it's just
restaurant and I'm like, I want to stage there.
dude, it's
You know.
fucking excellent. I'd love to work there. Like if that place went vegan, I would probably. I know it's predominantly plants. I've read the book a ton of times, and they give you the percentage breakdown of like if they got fish, meat, protein, and veg, and usually it's like 75% plants over. But it's yeah, if that place went vegan, I would love it.
Do you
It'd
only
be
cook
such a
vegan now? Do you only do
yeah.
vegan?
I only cook vegan, man. I've been vegan for like 8 years now, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my cooking career and my chef career. But now I only will want to work in restaurants that are vegan. So I'll never touch. I don't. Yeah, haven't touched in years, but no animal products whatsoever.
What's
Basically,
the reason?
it's just ethical, just ethical. So it's purely. I watched this documentary one time, and basically like, you got a lot of those documentaries, and I really don't like them, but they spend too much time on these like facts and on all this like perspectives and all this sort of stuff, like on going, uh, these animals are sentient beings, and here are the numbers of how many animals are getting killed, and all this sort of stuff. Like there's so much of that, and that never really convinced me. But I remember watching one movie called Earthlings, which was narrated by Joaquin Phoenix, an excellent actor. He's vegan himself, and basically it was rarely a single word said. It was just him narrating, saying like 6 ways in which they use and exploit animals, and there was like 15 or 20 minutes of every segment where all you would do is you would just watch video clips of just like the most heinous things that are happening
What the
now.
fuck?
And that was it. That was it. And that was it. And I was just like, and it wasn't like it was old footage. It
Yeah.
wasn't like it was doctored. They weren't trying to lie to you. It was nothing of that. It was just like, this is the reality of what's happening now. Like, this is it. This is it. Just watch it. And I just, for the first 40 minutes, I was watching it. And then I got to a scene where there was someone in Mexico or some country or whatever, where they'd like tied a rope around a dog's head to the back of a bull bar of a car. Someone was holding the back legs of the dog, and while it was alive, knifed the neck of it and then pulled its skin back. And I watched that and I was like, yeah, that's it. I turned it off and I was like, I can't watch it.
Right.
But like, I didn't. It's not like I stopped eating meat that night. It was not like that. It got as all I was thinking about. And then I told myself, I was like, look, if I'm serious about this, I I can't be ignorant and be a piece of shit because that's what I was telling myself. Sorry, I can't claim ignorance and be a piece of shit. Now that I know, now that I'm aware of it, I either have to finish it and go vegan, or I have to like somehow, if I'm going to continue doing this, find a way to just like I don't know what I like maybe like you know that Da Vinci Code? You know the weird guy like who goes home and he like whips
Who
himself for
whips
the sins.
himself?
Yeah. Like this is what I was imagining. Every time I'd eat meat, I'd have to like sin. I'd go home and I'd put the candles on, go into a robe and like and get a whip and
And just
whip
whip
myself
yourself.
and go. Yeah, for every sin, you know, like this is some sick shit I was imagining, right? Like if
Yeah.
I was continue eating meat, and I was like, nah, fuck it. So I watched that documentary and then I went to Southeast Asia like the week after and
Yeah.
came back and just went cold. And that was it.
Okay. There's one way to do it, chef. God damn.
Yeah, man. That's
Did you
crazy.
have issues with like your family? You know,
No,
were they like, "What the fuck are you doing?" No.
no, not at all. Like, because I guess I was chefing at that time, so there was never any doubt that I couldn't just cook whatever the fuck I wanted.
Right.
So,
What do you eat?
like,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, that was it. I just basically I cooked whatever the fuck I wanted, and that was it. End of story.
What are you eating mainly?
Now or then?
Just throughout your veganism.
It's a pretty good range. Like, I'm never really ate that fake meat. That was never a staple. Um, so I've got this fucking sitting right next to me here are like two big boxes of like a range of vegetables here that I just picked up today.
Okay.
But yeah, it'd be a range of like everything, like man, like potatoes, eggplants, tomatoes, broccolis, like zucchinis, all the grains of like coconut milks, all these herbs and spices. Like there's very Indian, Italian, Mexican in there, like a whole sort of range, like Thai, Asian. So there's always flavor. Everything was always flavor packed. It was never
Mm-hmm.
that mash and gravy. Like it was always like always something spiced. Like
Right.
especially after coming back from Vietnam and Cambodia was like fucking packed full of flavor. So like everything was punchy. So, but there was always a wide variety. Like it was never. And to this day, I've never. I think I supplemented B12 for a short time for like maybe like 2 weeks of that 7 years or 8 years, but after that, I was fine. Like it'll come back to bite my ass when I'm like 50 or 60. But
Right. You don't have to take any protein supplement or anything like that?
nah, I don't like. I don't do it every day. I'm not like. Please, no one listen to me and think that now you don't have to. Like it's really up. Like I don't want someone to listen to this and go, "Oh, he didn't do it, so I don't have to." Yeah, fucking whatever, man. Like
Yeah.
I'm fully taking on the consequences of the long term if there happens to be like.
Yeah.
But I'm taking that. It's like someone who fucking smokes. Someone can smoke like a pack a day and then not get cancer and then die at 80. But it just affects people differently.
Right.
Like this is what I'm saying. Like
Other people
I'm just. It's
smoke
just
for a year
everybody
and then
take
die.
your own concern, like, but also everyone's vitamins and minerals are different,
Yeah.
like I consume very different foods to different people and I exercise all the time. I'm always doing things like, I'm not sitting at home. I don't have an office job. So all these things factor into your balance of diet and whether you need to eat fresher foods or heavier foods and all this sort of shit. Like I really think about what I eat and my exercise. So it affects
Mm-hmm.
me differently, but
Right. Dope, man. Hell yeah. So what are your goals for the podcast? Like where would you like the podcast to take you?
dude, I'm gonna say it's like the realest question ever. Um, it's hard because initially I never set out big plans. Doing the podcast was just a bit of fun and a good way to banter and have people who were, had their restaurants closed that could sit and just listen to something and have a laugh and feel like they could relate to something, or tune into a bit of banter every week. And that's kind of always been where it's been. I've never sat at it long term. I could have some ideas where, once I've got the hang of just doing audio podcasts, in the first season, I'd go, how can I make it better? And every season I look at it and go, well, how can I know what I'm doing now? I'm getting comfortable. How can I do it better? And then the second season would be cool. I want to get a camera and start to do photography. So when I would interview them, it would turn into like a whole day process where I would go in early, we'd do the chat, and then I would take shots of them in the kitchen or of their venue. So then I could actually advertise what they do as well as what we talk about.
Yeah.
And then it would be like doing sound bites, and then it turned into doing trailers. So now I've got a trailer for every episode that's like, and I don't see many people doing this, and it's not purely because of that. That's
Right.
purely because of how much determination and passion I have for it. It has nothing to do with covering an empty market or trying to be better than somebody else. It's purely because it makes me happy to do so.
Right.
It makes me happy to learn a new skill. It makes me happy to get better at it and then learn something. It's like being a chef again, It's like, but it's a creative outlet. So it's like, trying to do a twirl, and just trying to refine it and get better at it and then find ways to be reinventive. And that's where it's at. And that's where I'm at right now. It's just going, well, fuck, like, I love these trailers. I love giving a visual format for an audio podcast. So
Yeah.
you can see who you're talking to, or you can see what they do. And I'm just navigating, refining the trailers. So they're quicker, they're better, they're punchier, they're higher quality, the music, all that sort of stuff. And I'm just trying to like focus on that.
Right.
And then who knows? I would love my next step is to make a chef film, is to do like a mini film, like a 10-15 minute where you're following the life of a chef. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But
like the real life.
Whether it's fictitious or like fictitious based on actual events.
Right.
But obviously being filmed, it's not like I'm just recording someone in the kitchen doing meat. Like it would be staged, but like they're all still real things,
right.
Like that would be, I think, amazing, where it's like following someone waking up in the morning and then that whole day and then going to bed, and it's all the little things about being a chef. It could be about the things we talked about, like waking up next to that partner and they've already gone to work for the day at like 7 a.m. if they work in the city, and and you getting up at like 8:30, 9 a.m., catching that train and listening to your hip hop music and looking at dishes of chefs and then going into work and writing in your notepad of your recipes and really following it in a really specific way. Like that would be my next goal. I think I would love that.
Dope. Hell yeah, chef. Well said. Fucking. Yeah. And I won't put this in the show, but what equipment are you using to edit your videos?
Edit the videos?
Yeah, I'm using, what software? Adobe Premiere?
Rush.
Yeah, Rush. Okay, use Rush. And that's how you make all your reels?
Yeah.
Okay, dope. Because I was looking at your reel with Andre, and I liked it. I was like,
so he made those ones.
Okay, he made them.
Yeah, he made those. So you have to ask him. You have to ask him how he does his.
Gotcha. Because I'm trying to figure out how the fuck to streamline it, bro. Because it's a lot of fucking work, and I'm like, you don't make any money off of this shit. So I'm like, fuck, man, I gotta, hustle. But there's this website right now I'm looking at called Upwork, and you could hire fools on there for like $3 an hour in Brazil to just like turn that shit out. Because at the end of the day, bro, you're the chef, right? You're the chef of the podcast. Yeah. You can't fucking be the dishwasher, the fucking, the server, the general manager, the bartender. Like, I think of this as a restaurant. Like, okay, I'm the chef. I have the ideas. I'm the artist. I need a fucking dishwasher to make the reels. You know what I mean? Yeah. I need a prep cook to make sure the studio is nice so I can focus more on guest experience when the chef comes in, right? Hey, here's some food, here's some wine, so I don't have to be like, oh, sit there in the camera for like 15 minutes awkwardly while I run around and try to figure these fucking cameras out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just all about getting it better, and I know it's not going to be better overnight. But
it takes time, man. It takes time. Like,
it takes time.
Reflecting on my own podcast, man, like if you go way back to the very beginning to now, like the content, the style of chatting, the quality of everything has just dramatically changed. Like It's crazy, like just everything. And I'm happy with where it was, but like at the time I was happy with where it was, but I'm even more happier now because it's got better. It'll take time. You'll learn. You'll be embarrassed with your previous dishes,
Damn
and
right.
then but you'll take that and you'll learn from that for the next one.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
Are you doing private events now?
I'm doing pop-ups.
Pop
So
ups. Okay. What's it called? How can we find it?
well, just if you go to my chef underscore Elijah Attard
Right.
page on Instagram, if you go to my bio, there's different links you can follow. So I've got a 6-seater intimate degustation coming up in like 3 weeks. So that's it's funny that you say that, but it's me basically doing everything. So
Yeah.
the food, the drinks,
Yeah.
the cleaning, the plate changing,
Right. Right.
everything. So
But
that's me doing just me.
right. Right. I would say when you do that, just you, it's such a labor of love though, because you're feeding someone. You know what I mean? And to me, sometimes doing the video stuff, you're in front of a computer. You know, and it's gotta be dark in there because you're fucking editing videos, right? So you need to see if
Yeah,
the
yeah,
lighting
yeah,
is
yeah.
right, so you don't go outside, and then before you know it, you're like, oh, I spent all day working on my podcast, didn't go outside one fucking time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like I gotta fucking change that shit, bro. I gotta
yeah.
make it so I'm not doing everything. That way I can, pounce on more interviews. This is my first virtual interview, by the way. First time
Oh, dude.
anybody will watch the show and be like, "Oh shit, it's virtual," because I like the face to face. But
Oh, I prefer it. Yeah,
yeah,
I prefer it.
but I like what you're doing. I saw what you're doing, and you and Chef's PSA has been the only food podcast and Pancon podcast in Florida that have been wanting to collaborate and do more. Because
Yeah,
like Andre was saying, when we grew up in kitchens, it was teamwork, but you were also competing against each other. And it was a lot of like, well, don't tell him what that ingredient is because you don't want him to make, you know what I mean? And now I feel like you tell me how you make your reels, I tell you how I make my reels. We're sharing notes and ideas, and I'm not afraid to say that, oh, Elijah from Roots Podcast told me that. Whereas
yeah, yeah,
before it's like you learned a recipe and you're like, I'm never fucking telling anyone who I learned this shit from, bro. This shit, I invented this shit. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, one of my buddies used to tell me that there's an old French chef who used to put his chef friends' names on the menu,
Oh,
and
nice.
say, okay, so, it's like Palms Robichon kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
I didn't make those fucking potatoes. Robichon did, right? So
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
me making those potatoes. So it's like
yeah,
that kind of thing. It's like, all right, I'm
yeah, yeah.
I'm I'm doing. Yeah, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was just saying, I do the same thing. I had a pop up just recently, and one of my mates is called Ziggy's Wild Foods, and he makes his own misos and hot sauces. And like, I used one of his misos on the menu, and I remember even saying on the menu, just like Ziggy's Bunyan Nut Miso or something, Or
Yeah,
I had another thing where this farmer donated produce for my pop up, which was like amazing. And so I was like, I made a quick last minute change on the menu where I was like, veg from Newcastle Greens, So it's like when you read it, and then people ask questions. I'm like, oh, what's Newcastle Greens? And I'm like, they're this local farm, and they donated this produce. They do excellent things, and they ask questions on that. Who's Robichon? Who's Ziggy? And that's really cool because it gives them the credit where credit's due.
exactly. Exactly. I think we're moving into that, and I think we're going to see a better, more positive hospitality industry moving forward here.
Yeah,
And
fuck yeah.
uh, and we're at the fucking forefront of that. So for anybody out there that doesn't fucking know, all right, fucking, it was a damn pleasure to talk to you, man. Thanks for taking time. And
Oh, you too, man.
this episode will be out tomorrow, 12 p.m. my time, so fucking Thursday.
Yeah.
But I'll let you know, and I'll shut you out on social media, man.
Fuck yeah, man. I appreciate it,
All right,
dude. Thanks for
brother.
having me on.
Yeah, man. It's a damn pleasure to meet you. Peace out, bro.
Adios.
Yeah, man.